So welcome to the January meeting of the CYPLL committee. Before we start, can I welcome Kenny Pullen, who's a new secondary teachers representative on the committee. Thanks for taking the time, Kenny. I hope you enjoy your
Looking forward to
stay on the committee. Okay, so can we move on to the agenda? Item 1, Sederunt and apologies. Lucy?
Good morning, everyone. We have 20 members present, and so far I have received apologies from Councillor Karen Crothers, Councillor Dempster, Timothy Birrell, and Sam Scobie. Not present are Councillor Inglis and Councillor Tate and George Jameson, but they may be along later in the meeting.
Can I just remind members that this meeting will be recorded and subsequently made available for the public to listen to the recording if they wish. Do we have any declarations of interest? Before we go on to the declarations of interest, because I suppose it's pertinent, there will be a late paper on the Northwest Community Campus. They should have copies in front of you. I'll take that at the end of the meeting, but you shaking your head, Dick? Oh, can we distribute them? Yeah. So I'll take that at the end of the meeting. I'll take a 15-minute recess to allow members to have a read of that. Basically, it's a late paper, but we need to have it come to this committee because we need to agree the timescale for the various groups of youngsters to migrate back onto the campus. Okay? So can we move to item 3 on page 7, which is a minute of the meeting held on the 27th of November 2018. This is for noting. Can we agree this is a true record? Members? So we move on to item 4 on page 15. This is the Standard Director's 6-monthly assessment of the business plan performance for the children, young people and lifelong learning. This report is the first 6-month performance report on the refreshed CYPLL business plan for the period 2018 to 2023. Overall performance across the CYPLL Directorate is positive and on track to reach expected outcomes. Where performance has fallen short of expectation, corrective measures have been taken and monitoring arrangements are in place for internal scrutiny of both performance and risk. Further detail can be found in the exception reports at Appendix 2 and 3 of this report. Risk management arrangements are also included in this report. The CYPLL senior management team review the CYPLL risk register aligned with the corporate risk register on a 6-monthly cycle to ensure adequate scrutiny. Further, as part of the refreshed business planning model, health and safety data is present in this report and will be presented for member scrutiny of this committee at the 6-month and year-end positions. The acting director, Gillian Bridson, supported by performance and quality manager, Gillian McNish, is present and happy to take any questions from members on the content of this report. Gillian, or Gillians, do you have anything to add to your report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's probably just to point out for members' information, on page 49 of the report, there are 2 indicators which fell below the expected targets. You will note that there are no exception reports attached to those. Just for your information, the first one pertaining to council-wide health and safety initiatives, on further scrutiny, that is related directly to the council-wide initiatives around incident reduction strategy, and that's just a temporary reflection of where we are at the moment corporately, and it's likely that that work will be reignited in the early new year, so we should expect to see a different position at the end of year reporting period. The second one is the percentage of RIDDOR investigations completed within 3 weeks. Again, on further scrutiny, the numbers are exceptionally small. We're looking at between 2 and 3, which were not completed within that 3-week cycle. And that explains the reason for no exception reporting, because the numbers are so small that they have skewed the figure and given us a red indicator there. If members want any other particular detail or want any specifics around those 2 points, I'd be happy to provide that detail for you and circulate to members.
Thanks, Gillian. John Charteris?
Again on page 49, I'd like to know what a RIDOR is.
They are incidents that are reportable to the Health and Safety Executive, so incidents that are dangerous occurrences. So they have a higher level of scrutiny, so we have to report them to the HSE. And we have specific timelines around that.
What's the acronym?
I don't know exactly off the top of my head. Reporting of incidents of dangerous occurrences. Yep.
I think John Thin put his hand up.
Google that. Reporting of injuries, dangerous occurrences, regulations.
Yes, it's the reporting of injuries, diseases and dangerous occurrences regulations.
This is a very difficult report to read and take in. And when words are being used which are not familiar like this at all and you can't interpret them, there's little point writing them down because you're wasting both your own time and my time, because I don't know what it means. So when I'm doing this, it would be helpful if we used plain English and we could then understand what we're trying to be told.
I think this has been raised in the past, and at one point we used to have a glossary at the back of the report, which made it easier to look these up. So can we have a look at that in terms of governance, whether we can reintroduce that? I don't know why it's dropped off, but the same is true of all committees, that it's now no longer included in the papers.
Yes, I can run that past governance clearance when they do their checks and ask that they make sure glossaries are included.
Yeah. Jim McComb wants to speak as well. John Campbell?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm looking at the key performance indicators on page 30, and there's a number of pages that reflect this. You've got the 2016-17 benchmark target value, then you've got the 2017-18, you've got a target but no value. I can understand the 2018-19 not measured for half years, but it's kind of difficult to look at the two previous years and see if we're actually making an improvement. I'm just wondering why these are missing.
The target is available for the 17-18 position, but the data is not. If you look at the benchmarking source, it's because a number of those targets and the data is either a Scottish average, which is an LGBF, local government benchmarking framework target, which is not actually available to us until the February. And again, that's reflective of those which are insight benchmarks, which again are pertaining to attainment and school exams. And again, they only happen at one point in the year, so we actually only have the data available at certain periods during that year. So in this particular position in the January, we don't have that data yet.
Could you let us know when we'll get that data?
Yes, I can expand on that within the report for you, but for LGBF and insight data, that will be in the February of the year.
Andrew?
Thanks, Chair. It was basically just to say about the glossary at the back of the papers on John's item. I was referring to the glossary at the back of the page, at the back of the reports for John's item.
Jim McComb?
Thanks, Chair. We have a large number of KPIs where it states not measured for half years. Is it necessary to include these KPIs in the report? Because the data which is shown is, pretty dated. It's going back to 2016-17. I would have thought, quite a bit of time could be saved by simply omitting these KPIs.
Gillian?
It's certainly something that we have considered before. In terms of those that are not measured for half years, at certain points in time, we may have proxy data for you, which is why we don't completely remove the KPI in its entirety. Where we do have information, we will provide it to you, even if it is best and latest data or a proxy measure. Unfortunately, the timing of this report sees that we actually don't have any of that at the moment. But I take your point on board, and we can certainly look at developing that for perhaps a shortened or expedited report for next time. Thank you.
Mel? Was it? I saw Julie.
Thank you. I've just got a couple of questions about it. One's about page 20, and it talks about looking at improving the flexibility of early education by aligning the nursery day with the school day and working better with childcare partners. I'm just wondering what that actually means, what that would look like.
In terms of the project that is there, that is the project for looking at the options for delivery of that. I don't know, Gillian, whether you have anything further to add.
Thank you. This was a council priority. This was something members asked us to look at specifically. And as you can see, that piece of work was started last year and has been completed. And as Gillian highlighted, it is the implementation of the expansion of early learning and childcare that came to members over the last year in terms of the planning for that. So now we have incorporated that improvement project into the delivery of the agreed implementation plan.
So does that mean it would be aligned with the current primary school day? Are there plans to change school days or anything?
No, I think the term here was, it was an instruction from the council to officers to look at improving the flexibility of early learning and childcare, right. And we have done that and incorporated it within the implementation plan.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was regarding the SALTs, which is the speech and language therapy, upskilling across the workforce. Obviously, being in nursery myself, I've had access to the training and the upskilling, but the issues that we have that are still ongoing are that there are not enough speech and language therapists out there. So even with the early identification and us implementing things in our early learning and childcare settings, we're still not seeing a positive impact of this. And I'm just wondering what the view is on how we can take that forward.
Thank you. I'm absolutely aware of the pressures on some of our NHS colleagues in recruiting to these posts. It is something we're looking to continue to work with them for. We don't have any easy answers for that, but the important thing here is about speech and language therapy skills and building capacity in our staff. So where we can work with NHS for training programmes for our staff, then we can, such as big reading and black sheep, we can then use those skills to support our own staff. But you're absolutely correct. Recruitment of speech and language therapists is very difficult. We're doing what we can to improve the capacity across the region.
Sorry, I had one more question. It's on page 24. I know at the last meeting we had said about replacing and upgrading the wireless technology in our secondary schools. I was approached before I knew of Kenny's presence by some secondary members who were just querying this because they were saying, what's the point of the upgrade if they cannot actually access the resources online that they need? So I've got some Scottish history, some history teachers, modern studies teachers who've been in touch. They have a Google Drive, which is shared, and Google Classroom, and they liaise across the whole of Scotland, creating resources for use in school. But Dumfries and Galloway schools cannot access the Google Drive or Google Classroom because of the firewalls that are up. And it was really to say, what's the point of giving us this wonderful technology if we cannot actually access it in school and use it the way it was intended?
I'll look into that one specifically, Julie. Clearly the aim is the increased connectivity, which I'm delighted that we're progressing very well. Security is a key priority for us. If our networks are blocking access to particular resources, we will look into that. I wasn't aware of that, Julie, so thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Sean?
Thanks, Chair. Having been to Policy and Resources and EEI over the last couple of weeks, we've had similar reports, and on the whole, the report is good with not so many, that are in the red. I see there's 3 that are probably across the council with regards to FOIs, personal information and performance appraisals. One thing did raise with regards to FOIs is sometimes, and I know the very nature of some of the things that's happened over the last 6 to 9 months will have increased the FOIs, but also as well, sometimes we need more than 20 days, and I think raised it with policy and resources that maybe we're including ones in where we've requested more time over the 20 days, so that maybe can be amended in the future. The one question I do have though is one that's on target, which is page 35 at the bottom, and that is school meals uptake. We've had a target over the last 3 years of 45%, but worryingly, we are seeing a drop of 2% over the last 2-3 years. So I just wondered, has there been any analysis of that, and what's the main reason for this kind of downward trend?
The target is the national average, and we continue to do really well with our school meal service, and it has been a success story over the last 10 years that it has increased year on year with our uptake, and at one point last year we were feeding more children than we were not, and that has been something we've been pleased to report to members. There has been a slight decrease this year. I haven't got a specific reason for that, but it's certainly something I can look into with Alan, whether they've identified any particular trend to that.
Doug?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's something quite simple actually. There's a few points really. Page 19. I just wanted to know why we're including developed free breakfast clubs in every primary school across Dumfries and Galloway. No start date, but yet we're ahead. 31st of March. Your time frame is April to September 2018. I just wondered why we're really including that. Thanks.
With reference to the project there, it's just for members' information that the actual project there to develop the pilots for breakfast clubs in schools has actually come to a completion. We can reflect that in future reports and remove that from there, but on this occasion, this is the first instance of reporting that is now complete.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chair. Page 25, we have develop a clear plan to fully implement phase 2. 25% we're setting it just now, but yeah, we're up to 2022 for the end of the plan. So I'm just thinking that's a little bit of a long time for a plan, isn't it?
The development of the implementation of phase 2 within this context is obviously the entire project. The 2022 stretch aim there is because of the requirement to wait for additional funding for us to be able to implement the plan. So the 25% position just reflects the fact that we have established a capital programme of works, but we obviously need to wait for the additional funding to be either agreed or not.
The Cabinet Secretary of Education, I think, made a statement at the end of last year that there would be additional money available, but probably not until 2021. Ivor?
Thank you, Chair. It's with regard to page 57, the number of young people attending youth work service events. On paper, this is a really good report. Is there any way we could take out the Youth Beats figures to see how the underlying trend is? Because, we did have a boost this year with the 8-day event, but how are the other services out with the major event doing? Because I think when I walk past Oasis Centre, there's a lot of young people accessing that, and I think there could be a success story over and above, but it's sort of overshadowed by the fact that Youth Beats is in there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. For your information, we are looking at providing additional KPIs with proxy data for the individual youth work events, which might obviously be of members' interest. You'll see that there is an exception report in this cycle that shows a significant increase in the volunteering section, particularly pertaining to the Youth Beats event. So I absolutely take your point on board, and this is a good news story and is reflective of the period that we've had Youth Beats in, but absolutely we can look at different reporting moving forward.
Ros?
Thank you, Chair. I'm on page 33, and I'm looking at the School Transport Contingency Fund, and there's obviously a formula here that and I'm not sure when that was agreed or why it was particularly agreed, but talking to members, it seems that quite a few of us get queries about this. People who live out with the top mileage stated miles. Is it possible to get some statistics about this and find out a bit more? Because I think some of the issues that I have aren't necessarily complaints, but I'm hearing from other members that we do get a lot of queries about it.
Yep, you're absolutely correct. We are bound by the policy in this instance, so there is a matrix for calculating how and when people are eligible. But absolutely, yes, we can look at the data for you to give you some context in that case.
To come back in on that, operationally, we have not, I don't think we have sent out information to parents on this, perhaps as this year. Perhaps this is something that we could improve our communication with parents on. Clearly, there's a very small number of parents who are eligible for this fund, because you have to be, as its bullet points highlight, you've got to attend your catchment school, you've got to be in receipt of free school meals, and you've got to be within that 2 and 3 miles. So it's a very small number of families, but we do need to make every effort to ensure that they are aware to claim for this if they are entitled to do so. So I'll take that as an action.
Yeah, and obviously it is very much within the anti-poverty. Yeah. Okay. Katie?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on a point that was made by Julie in regards to the access to speech and language therapy skills across early years workforce. Do we have a KPI for access to speech and language therapy service across our schools? The reason why I ask is I'm aware that there's potentially a 10-month waiting list to this service, and those that are seeking assessments for the likes of autism, which we've clearly highlighted as a priority within our council, would then have to wait 10 months to access that service, to then get a referral to the autism diagnostic team, which I've been told is currently under review, so there's no information on waiting lists for that team at all. Now, clearly early years is really important because we want to catch children at an early stage, but there is always going to be children that slip through that. So how are we supporting those children? And if we don't have a KPI, is this something that we can look to put in place for the future so we can actually measure how well we're actually supporting these young people within our schools?
If I may take that one, I think that would be a very helpful addition to the Children's Services Plan. Clearly, it's not a service we as a council deliver, and we would be reliant on partners in providing us with that information. But members are currently looking for additional information with regards to our partnership working, and that I'll take that back. And in fact, we are discussing this next week at the Children's Services Executive Group, and I will add that to the agenda. That's very helpful. Thank you.
And David?
Thanks, Chair. It's following on from the primary school teacher's question on language therapy skills. I don't know how to name it, call these people, the people that look after our preschool children, they've got to get qualifications, is my understanding. Now, is there some language therapy included in that training? No, obviously they're not going to be qualified in that realm, but do they get skills? Are they enabled to get skills to address these issues with youngsters?
I think we have an expert in the room. If I may pass that question to Julie, if I may. I believe the answer is not statutorily, but we could locally deliver that. Julie?
Yes, at the moment it's not covered as part of training. Now, it depends on the way you come into the early years workforce. So, for example, if you come in as a teacher, you have looked at child development, but you don't go into the depth that you need to help children acquire language from the very start. And even the training courses available to staff at the moment don't delve into that deeply enough. So it would have to be something that could be looked at with our partners in the health board who deliver that service for us. Certainly the training that I've been able to access as a teacher, I'm involved in the Black Sheep resource, which is talking, listening, questioning. And we know the gains our children make through using that resource in nursery, but you need to be quite skilled in using that. You need to have quite a bit of experience and support systems around you to use it effectively. So children coming in who are at risk of language deprivation, so they may come in with no language at all, which we've got increasing numbers coming in with no language at all to preschool. By the time they leave us, they have gained 3, 4, 5 years of language skills, even though they've only been with us maybe 2 years. So it is a really good resource, but you need time, you need money, and you need training to access it and use it fully. I hope that answers your question.
Jim, do you want to come back? No.
It just makes it worse, really. I don't know how you could overcome it, because as the lady says, there's youngsters who'll come into childcare at 1 and 2 year old with virtually no speech at all. But very often it's only by talking to them that they pick it up. But it's whether that sort of thing is spelled out to the youngster, the tutors in the, if you want to call them that, in the childcare section, whether they're told about how to address that sort of thing. I think that's my biggest concern. I realise what you're talking about with speech and language therapy, and as a medical side, I recognise that that's more serious, but it's just a sort of something that the tutors in the childcare could pick up on just as a matter of course.
Thank you. I mean, certainly our nursery nurses and our early years support assistants are very aware of the need to build listening and talking skills. And I think if we are struggling to recruit speech and language therapists, and I have great sympathy for our NHS partners on that, we need to do what we can to train our own people using their expertise.
Julie, you want to come in?
Sorry, can I also respond to that? There's a document that we use in every early learning and childcare setting throughout Scotland called Building the Ambition, and it lays out within it what the young child needs, what the toddler needs, and it very specifically deals with language acquisition in it. Now, there are several of us in this authority who are trained to deliver that document and the training that runs alongside it, and we've used it successfully in our cluster within the stewardship. Staff have accessed that training, but I think it's something that probably needs to be revisited every couple of years to ensure that it stays fresh in staff minds, and it's maybe something, Gillian, we could look at to incorporate into our continuing professional development.
Okay, Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Page 25, in relation to the use of digital technology. The first bullet point there, we will develop a local strategy based on a change in culture of digital technologies in education. My question is, are there still problems with children using their own devices in the classroom?
Problems because we want them to use it and they can't because of the connectivity, or problems because they're using them when they shouldn't? And I suppose it's a bit of both, perhaps.
Principally the first case.
We are almost there at the Bring Your Own Device. We are within weeks of introducing Bring Your Own Device in Dalbeattie and St Joseph's. We are just finalising the guidance document because clearly parents want to be assured that we're using the devices securely and that pupils are only accessing material that they should. So the documents are out for consultation with the head teachers. Head teachers are just giving them a bit of a sense check, and as soon as those are finished, the two schools, as I mentioned, Dalbeattie and St Joseph's, will be trialling the Bring Your Own Device, and then very quickly thereafter we'll be able to roll that out across all secondary schools.
Got no more sudden flurry. Ivor?
Just a quick one. It's on page 45. Number of attendances at swimming pools and indoor sports and leisure. We've got half one 2018-19 and we've got full years for 2017-18, 2016-17. Could we put the half year data in for the previous years? Because, you know, if you look at it, 157,000 is the target. Double that for a full year would be 314-ish. but we're looking at 365. It's just to give a comparison to see if we're ahead of previous years, because in summer you might not be out or indoors as much. So just to give a comparison year on year rather than full year against a half year.
The quick answer to that is yes, we can. You're right, the figures are reflective of a half-year position because we will have seasonality and events, for example, that will impact the attendance rates.
Doug?
Thank you, Chair. Just personally from my own scrutiny, page 37, page 38, page 39, page 40, page 41. This seems to be more social work communities. I just wondered why it's really in this paper.
Sorry, through yourself, Chair, could you be specific? The pages have included communities data.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my head around it. It seems to me to be more a social work communities thing than a CYPLL.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Julie.
I totally acknowledge. I think given that the Chief Social Worker reports to myself and the Chief Social Work in its entirety is included within Children, Young People and Lifelong Learning, these indicators sit within this report, which is brought for you today. Although it does Children, Young People and Lifelong Learning, I can see why they don't necessarily comfortably sit here, but given that social work reports to this committee, that's why they're included in this performance report.
Adam?
Thanks. Can we just get confirmed through governance that the delegation for the monitoring and scrutiny of the CYPLL in its entirety does sit with this committee?
Yes, it does.
Can we move to the recommendations? 2.1, I think we've reviewed the 6-month summary fairly thoroughly. Happy with that? 2.2, first scrutinised the exception reporting, and 2.3 noted the project exception report in Appendix 3. Okay. So if we move on to item 5, the early learning and childcare planning for the expansion towards 1140 hours by 2020-2021, which is on page 65. Okay. This paper provides an update on the timescales from the Scottish Government for the production of guidance notes around partner provider sustainable rates and business sustainability. In light of this guidance not being available until after March 2019, agreement is sought to move to the recommended rates within the independent financial review conducted by CYPFA, with a further review carried out once Scottish Government guidance is made available. Phase 2 is now start within Ann Town area, and Phase 3 is moving towards the enrolment period for entitled children. Within Phase 3, Northwest Dumfries currently has a potential capacity pressure of around about 40 places. This will be addressed ahead of the statutory duty to provide 1140 hours in August 2020. However, as an interim measure, members are asked to agree to allow eligible children to access providers of their choice within the Dumfries area, not just the previously agreed postcode area. Members agreed to provide capital funding to partner providers to increase nursery provision in designated areas. The closing date for application was the 14th of December, and there have been 5 eligible applications. All 5 will receive capital grants and support their projects, with the final amounts currently under evaluation. And we have Lauren Voss to speak to the report. Is there anything you want to add, Lauren?
Thanks, Chair. I think there's been a couple of updates since the completion of the paper that will be valuable for members' information. One is, first I'll start with an apology. It says an update from September 2018. It's definitely January 2019, this update paper. And also in Appendix 2, it references lunch for the meal that's provided to the youngsters. That should state meal in all areas of that appendix and all through the body of the report. The entitlement is to provide a meal, whether that's breakfast, lunch, or a dinner to the youngsters. So those 2 pieces will be updated. Also within Appendix 2, where it looks at the hourly rate, on the last table, the detail underneath it talks about it being increased by 28 pence. It actually, what it should say there is that's on top of the 27. So in total, it's 55 pence. So if a provider is looking to deliver lunch through themselves and they have evidence that they are handing over the real living wage to their staff, then their hourly rate would be uplifted by the 55 pence. But we can touch on that in more detail later on. I think what is important to add as well, currently just now we have 4 partner providers delivering 1,140 hours to children across Dumfries and Galloway. Now they have had their financial allocation provided to them based on the existing hourly rate. So for 3 to 5 year olds, that's the £4.09. For the 2 year olds, that's £4.88. What we would be looking to do after the meeting today is, if the CYPLL rates are approved, we would increase that rate pro rata back to the start of this session for those providers. At the point of writing, we weren't able to get facts and figures on the number of children that would physically be enrolled at that point in time, so we weren't able to write in what the budget pressure potentially would be for the time of the paper, but that has happened now. So on the assumption that every provider has a method of proving that they are delivering a real living wage to all of their staff, the budget pressure would amount to £31,000. If they weren't able to provide evidence that they were providing the real living wage to their staff, the budget pressure would be £22,000. Now that budget pressure can be contained within the funding package that came down from the Scottish Government for delivering early learning and childcare. That budget pressure only sits between now and the change of financial year. I think also, by way of update for North West Dumfries, we were anticipating a capacity pressure of around 40 places. That was based on Lochside Primary School not having gone through the asset transfer process. That has now concluded, so that releases a little bit of pressure in that area. So that takes it down by 15-20 spaces, which helps us go in the right direction. And if members agree today to allow access for children living inside the ring-fenced postcode area to areas inside Dumfries, that balances everything out. Ultimately, there is no budget difference on that, whether it's inside the postcode ring-fenced area or outside. It widens that circle for access. In total, just now, there are 38 children accessing early learning and childcare outside the North West Dumfries ring-fenced postcode area, so it fits quite neatly as a solution. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Members? Richard?
Thanks, Chair. I was going to ask about the budget implications there, but I think you've answered it in your answer. The budget pressures on adopting the CYPLL recommendation, which seem reasonable. Obviously, this is a Scottish Government initiative, and we're hoping that all the funding would be provided from the national source. This extra budget pressure will be met by the Scottish Government?
Yes, it will be. So within the full bid for early learning and childcare, there's a few discretionary budgets that sit across the different budget headings. So all we're doing is moving some of those around. At the time of the submission, the hourly rate increase started for next financial year. It wasn't accounted for the remainder of this. So that's why it's creating a budget pressure. But when we balance that out against lunch costs and other bits and pieces within there, it neutralises itself. So it's not a direct council budget pressure. It's contained within the Scottish Government funding.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Lana. Good report, this Chairman. I think it's a good news story in real terms. I had a couple of points. I think one's already been clarified in regards to a meal rather than a lunch, so that's good to hear that. So that's been recognised, gives us a higher level of flexibility, I think, through the day. But I suppose the one thing that I didn't hear being touched on there, just about being Scottish Government funding, if they've got to cover this as well, inflationary uplift index linked, so to speak, how are we covered for future years? Kind of, are we, so in regards to it being future-proofed for the providers, is what I'm thinking, are we covered there?
It's a good question. At the time of submitting the bid to the Scottish Government, we were told that we should not account for inflationary uplift within our submission. That would be accounted for at a national level. So whatever we put in as our bottom line, they would apply the inflationary rate at that point. I think what's critical here is that if we adopt the recommendations from the CYPLL report, it talks about it being index linked and inflated, and the existing value was uplifted by 2.2%. So if we adopt that as a set of principles, then we can apply that to the hourly rate going forward. We're challenging the Scottish Government just now because within their multi-year funding allocation, they state that it's been uprated for inflation. Now, what we're asking is, okay, that's brilliant, but we have not seen that against our bid. Will that be coming down within the overall funding package and the overall allocation to the authority, and then it will be included in there, and that's what the clarity we're looking for. But I think in principle, if we're agreeing the CYPLL report, then we will take account of inflationary uplift for the hourly rate.
No, thanks very much. That's a positive update. Good to hear that the Council's taking on their duties and responsibilities and say they're looking after this and they will look at that as an uplift. But I would imagine Scottish Government they'll stand up to the mark and hopefully apply an inflationary uplift as well on an annual basis to us.
Sean?
Yeah, just a quick question on 3.3.2 at the bottom, page 66, and the top, page 67. It's just with regards to when a provider actually agrees to take the free meal lunch allocation. Do we monitor that to ensure that that's being provided?
Yes, we do. So there's two solutions for providing a meal within the early learning childcare setting. One is that it will be delivered through our partners in Enterprise and EG who track and monitor that. If they're choosing to deliver it themselves, we have an early years quality team who are out visiting and supervising, and they'll do that quality check, not just for lunches, but across all the different quality criteria that they have to deliver for us.
Katie?
Thank you, Chair. I was just really looking for some information, really. On 3.22, we make reference to the £4.09 and the £4.88. And if I recall correctly, we were sitting above average at these points nationally. So I was just wondering where the £5.35 and the £6.26 actually placed us in a table, so to speak, across the country. Where do we sit in terms of how much we're paying our private providers? Do we have that information? Maybe not.
At this point, until all other local authorities agree what their uplifted hourly rate will be, we don't really know. I think we've been quite early in adopting an uplifted value. That it's part of the work that Scotland Excel are doing around what the guidance will look like. I think a lot of our authorities are waiting for that to come out, whereas we were ahead of the game with the CYPLL independent review on it. So,
just for members' assurance, I was at COSLA last week, and other authorities asked for our information, they asked for our standard letters, and they asked for our CYPLL report to allow and advise them on their own approach. So I think Lana's absolutely right. We were ahead of the game here, and I'm pleased that we've been able to bring this report to you today.
And I think we have also supplied the Scottish Government with a copy of the CYPLL report as well to show that we have actually treated this in a sensible fashion in terms of paying the appropriate hourly rate. Julie?
It was really just a question. Obviously, I know the capital funding has come down in a separate budget, but I believe we've got several nurseries that would be able to take additional children just now, but we don't have funds available to pay staff to increase those in size. So I understand that the project is rolling out. We've been changed, the timescales have changed again. I'm being approached by parents who obviously were dead keen to get children in and thought that come August of next year it would be happening, and we're now being told it's the following year. Is there any chance of looking at these again? Will the Scottish Government, I mean, I know it's like kind of try to read a crystal ball at the moment, but is there any chance if funding was to become available, some of these nurseries that have the new facilities could actually start using them?
If you want to revisit the phasing and the agreement that was given around phase 1, 2, 3 and 4, that's the challenge in it. The bid to the government was based on the revenue and the capital allocations on a phased approach. Now, it might be that once we've got through phase 3, there may be an opportunity to bring phase 4 forward slightly. But I think we would need to have a discussion offline around which individual settings that we're talking about to see. I mean, I'm guessing that there's places like Gatehouse and Trequeer, the places where there's been investment that physically are ready to deliver. The challenge is that if we open that up and allow that to happen, you really have to open up everyone else within that ring-fence postcode area, and that's where the difficulties lie. I think it's also worth touching on the capital grant process that went out to partner providers. We had 7 bids in total, 2 of which weren't really eligible through various reasons, one of which we're looking to support separately. The other was actually for transport, so it didn't sit as a capital bid. But in total, it's potentially around £700,000 that would be delivered to the partner providers to support them with their own expansion. So I think that's quite a good news story as well. We've not quite finalised the exact amount that will go out to them, because we're having to track back what other state aid benefit they've gained through other sources, just to make sure that we don't go above the maximum value that can be delivered, so that they don't lose from elsewhere. But I think that's quite a good news story to point out as well.
Yeah, just a question on the meals, Chair. Will the care sector be following healthy eating guidelines?
Yes, they have it's called Setting the Table. It's a guideline that nursery early learning childcare follows. There's been an appointment within Enterprising DG for someone that goes out and talks to not just local authority nurseries, but also partner providers, to take them through what that looks like. It's right down to setting menus and how the kids are involved in the process of serving themselves, and so it takes account of all the nutritional factors.
Okay, members, can we move to the recommendations on page 65? Can we note 2.1, agree 2.2, note 2.3, and agree 2.4? Right, thanks, members. So moving on to item 6, which starts on page 83, the property building school asset class update. This is a quarterly update on the current financial spend to date up to the end of December 2018, together with the forecast total expenditure for financial years 2018-19. The report covers both the property building schools asset class and the capital expenditure for the delivery of capital projects within the early learning and childcare programme. Overall, the capital investment expenditure is forecasting a required acceleration of £384,000 from financial year 2019-20. The report also highlights the partnership working with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Services that is having a positive impact and reduce the number of unwanted fire alarm signals, which were resulting in fire appliances attending schools. So once again, we've got Lauren to speak to the report. Is there anything you want to add, Lauren?
Thank you, Chair. Not overly too much to add to it, other than I think what is good to focus on. Within the appendix, there's obviously quite a list of projects that have taken place across the financial year. I think what is important, though, is to look at the places where there's been significant investment of over 200,000 or so. That's quite a list of primary schools that have seen major refurbishments. And that makes a significant difference to the youngsters and the teaching staff within those places. So whilst there's lots of rolling programmes going along that are spending £10,000-20,000 here and there are around 10 schools that have had a significant level of investment that would see a good level of refurbishment within those settings. But happy to take any questions.
I should add in my preamble, if there are individual schools you want to discuss with Lauren, can you do so outside the meeting? Bearing in mind we do still have 99 primary schools and 16 secondary schools. Okay, members?
Thank you, Chair. I was just really looking for some clarification really on page 84. In 3.2.2, we've got the projected outturn for the financial years 18-19, and in the last sentence it states that local authorities have discretion over how this is profiled up to and including financial 21-22. I'm just looking at the table below, and you've got projects costs, actual spend and forecast. Now, my maths isn't that great, but I'm looking at some of these and they don't seem to all match up. So should we have had another table of costs that are going forward, or have previous costs already been met? I'm not quite sure where the discrepancy comes in there. Is it that we can spend it up to 2022? And if so, in future, could we have that future column on the table?
I think there's a couple of things in there. I think how the allocation works in the school's asset class is you run at risk of, if you don't account for everything, you might lose some of it. It might get taken away for other priorities. But within the early learning and childcare part, it's the overall pot that we're working to, and if it slips from one year to the next, then that isn't an issue. Just through timing, that's what it's ring-fenced against. I think in the table, the project costs are, for want of a better phrase, they're the costs sitting on what you think it might be at concept stage. And it's only when you get through the actual detail of, so if a project's delivered 6 weeks sooner, it's cheaper because you've lost all the wages and salaries and preliminary rates. It also might be that for some of those projects, they've been delivered over a couple of financial years, so you might have had a little bit of expenditure last financial year. But I can add another column to that if that's helpful to show where it sits.
Yep, thank you. I mean, as I say, I'm just looking, the table's quite confusing, and if I take Minigaff Nursery, for example, the project cost is 576,000+, and the actual spend is only 1,500, and there's forecasts of 27. Where's the extra 500,000 plus? What's happened to that? Because that's a significant amount of money that's not on there.
Absolutely, and take that point on board. Minigaff is one that's at design stage, so there will only be that amount, that £27,500 spent this financial year. The rest will go into when it's onto the construction stage.
Adam?
Thanks. I completely welcome all the work that's taken place. I think it's more just a general question. I have had a number of head teachers who have said to me, we've asked for this specific work to be done for various reasons. Quite often it's because of having to reconfigure rooms to go to be a classroom, and naturally that there's something they'd like done. What's the process that goes through all of these requests from primary schools and from secondary schools to determine which ones actually make it onto the capital programme?
It varies depending on what they're actually requesting to take place. It might be that it's something that sits within their own devolved budget that they can have full responsibility for. What we tend to do within the significant asset class investment is make sure that we're following the priority order investment agreed through this committee. We will then go out and consult with the head teachers in the school to say, look, we're here. This is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be fixing all the electrical stuff. We're going to be fixing the mechanicals. While we're here, is there anything around the suitability of this school that you think could be improved to make sure that there's better outcomes for the youngsters coming through there? Outside of that, there are instances where there's pressure on a learning centre within the school, or there's a capacity challenge, or these are things that the head teachers should probably raise directly with myself, and then we can have a discussion round about those. It depends. Each situation is individual, and it might be that it's a repairs maintenance challenge that they're facing, and that would sit with property and architectural services. It might be it's a significant capital investment, and that would sit within the asset class, or it might be a localised solution that would sit within their own devolved budget. So I think in the first instance, they should contact the centre, and we can give them a little bit of direction on which path their particular project would need to go.
I've heard it from various head teachers, but one in particular certainly. I think she, in particular, were told it would be your own devolved budget, but essentially that the work to be carried out, if she had went through the centre, it would have blown the entire devolved management budget. So how can we work better with schools to make sure? I think that there was a couple of on particular cases health and safety incidents. Health and safety risks that were associated, and they're just wanting to make a safer learning environment in those particular instances.
I think if that's something we can have a chat, and then I'll know the detail around about it, and then we can look at a solution.
Ivor?
Thank you. We're approaching a sort of difficult budgetary period, shall we say. That's maybe being mild. And I had a constituent approached me about an interview that was on the radio whereby it was mentioned the possibility of rationalisation of school buildings. Are there any of the buildings in here possible abortive spends? I'm thinking back to years ago we had Glinger Primary where I think they did an upgrade on a kitchen, and then within 2 or 3 weeks of it being upgraded, the parents decided that it'd be better to relocate to Canonbay and Langham. So we closed the school and spent a lot of money on actual improving it. Is there anything in here that we're actually maybe spending money on that, I don't know what the criteria might be, but there may be an option in the future where actually we've spent money and the school has itself closed, or we might have to take that difficult decision in the future?
I think that is always a risk. You don't, without a crystal ball, to look at some of the schools that have particularly low pupil numbers. They are locations that any investment in there could be abortive. So I think it's about the value for money element and the level of investment. And we're following policy just now on no rural school closures, which protects every primary school and all the secondary schools pretty much outside of Dumfries, Annan and Stranraer. And until that direction is changed, then we have to stick true to that. I think every time a school comes around for significant investment, those are the very questions that are being asked. It is one of those ones that if there's a policy change, then we would have to reflect what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all appreciate the financial problems which we face not only in this coming financial year, but for years, the next 2 years after that. The projection is we're going to have to find another £50 million worth of savings on top of almost 100 million since 2010. So it is very, very difficult to look into the future and see what it holds. Okay, members, can we move to the recommendations? Can we note 2.1 and 2.2? Okay, so we now move to item 7, the North West Community Campus update. This is the late paper, so everyone should have a copy of the paper. Can I suggest that we have a recess of 15 minutes to allow members to look at the contents of the paper? It's fairly short. So if we reconvene at 11:45. On the North West Community Campus update, and can I once again remind members that the proceedings are being recorded and will be made available to the public. So we have Barry Graham to speak to this. Gillian, Barry, is there anything you want to add to the report?
Thanks, Chair. Paul McCulloch's not able to make the committee today, and just wanted to pass on to everybody that the checks are continuing. In the paper you'll see that 80% complete, and they will continue until he is 100% happy that everything is ready to go. Right? Okay. Thank you.
Again, I met with Paul this morning prior to him having to go up to the Central Belt to meet with the Scottish Futures Trust, and we have a timescale to receive the root cause review. The reason that this paper is slightly late is we waited the latest possible moment to get as much information to bring to members. So we now have a timescale which will be reported to full council as previously agreed on the root cause analysis. So we can expect to receive the final report at the end of February, the beginning of March. So that will come to members as soon as we have that information in our hands.
Thanks, Gillian. Members? Ian?
Thanks, firstly, Chair. Sorry I was a wee bit late coming into the meeting, but thanks, firstly, for bringing this on to the agenda as any other business. I think it's important that we do keep a close eye on North West Community Campus. I think it's probably the second recommendation. It's a wee bit disappointing in regards to the timelines, but that's only a kind of personal view. But we are where we are, better being safer than sorry. I think it's taking the right approach. when it comes to that, but it is what it is really in real terms. As long as I get in there safe and secure. 3.3.2, Jim, it's just the bottom a page, doesn't actually got a page number, it's the bottom of the last, it talks about I suppose it's communication and engagement in particular, actually going back to 3.3, but then in that particular paragraph, 3.3.2, it talks about the substance misuse behaviour, so on and so forth. Now, we know some of that's a wider issue, it's not just focused certainly on North West Community Campus, but I suppose what I'd like to just ask for is reassurances, Chairman, for Barry and maybe Gillian, in regards to, when it comes to North West Community Campuses, that we're on top of this, that we continue to carry on with the kind of positive levels of community engagement we have been having, taking the community with us. I think that's the reassurances I think we're looking for in real terms. It has, it's changed, it's turned a corner, certainly seems to have done, and it's going forward in a very positive direction. So, but this other stuff's coming through the side, which is wider, not just North West Community Campus. So long as that's not having any great effect, and so long as we're on top of that, we make sure that's being covered. Chairman, that's, I think, in the quick reading, it's only 15 minutes, but appropriate. Again, thanks for bringing it in. I think it's fair that he did. It's right, but I think as far as the reassurances on 3.3, the whole of that, but the particular behaviours and misuse and such like, I think if we could have got them verbally, it would be much appreciated, Chairman.
Yeah, I think obviously any evidence of substance misuse by people of any age isn't a good news story, but just put this into context in the media. I think last week there was a report which said in Dundee there's one youngster admitted to hospital on average each week through misuse of Class A substances. So it's regrettable that we have had this instance, but as you say, it's very, very widespread, unfortunately. Barry?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think we all worry about drugs. They're in most communities, I'm afraid, and it's important that we educate young people, about the dangers of drugs, and we've got to be intelligent about how we approach that, because young people, being young people, sometimes want to experiment, but we've got to be very clear on the dangers of that. Following the two incidents that have happened in the last 2 weeks, the school has had a number of assemblies with pupils. We've been very clear with the parents of the pupils that have been involved. The one big positive in it all has been the way in which the other students in the school have responded to this and made sure that management were aware, very quickly, so we were able to get the ambulance and medical support very quickly there. So we'll continue to work on it. It's something that we have to, it's not something that's going to go away, and it's something that we've got to keep working on, and we're working very closely with Police Scotland, and I know that Gillian met with Police Scotland on Friday to carry on some of that work as well.
I confirm, just as Barry said, we met around the table to discuss the week's incidents as a bit of a debrief and to make sure that everything that we're doing is joined up in terms of information sharing and taking every opportunity to have information from the community about those who perhaps don't have our children's best interests at heart to allow the police to act.
Dick?
Thanks, Chair. It's good that we're getting a well-managed approach to reopening the campus, and hopefully from then on it will be a great success. I'm just a bit concerned about the proposed closure of for Langland pupils and for 4 days, 14th, 15th, 18th, 19th. Just a bit concerned about that. Obviously, it's going to affect our most vulnerable children in the education system. It will have consequences for the parents. Have we engaged with the parents and sought to speak to the children at Langlands to make sure that this is acceptable to them? And do we have a plan B if what is that plan B if the Scottish Government say, well, no, you can't have these closure days?
Thank you, Chair. I'll answer your second part first. We received a letter yesterday to confirm that they're giving us the 4 days. It just came in yesterday afternoon after I chased the original letter from December. Liz Watson is the head teacher at Langlands, and she's been working very closely with the pupils, the staff and the parents, and they are aware of the plan for those 4 days. It is a normal part of a move to a new building, is that you have you ask for 4 days, so it's 2 days to pack and 2 days to unpack. Staff are positive about that, and they're just looking forward to moving in as soon as the building is ready.
Kenny?
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask a question about paragraph 3.5.3? I think we would all probably agree with the timing is correct for the senior pupils in the senior phase, so the move can be done after they've sat their exams to cause least disruption. However, just the second part of that paragraph talks about secondary staff will undertake familiarisation training required during pupil study leave. They'll also, I believe, be packing and unpacking during study leave. That period of time for secondary staff is extremely busy in terms of development of courses for next year and just taking that time to make sure that they're ready for June onwards for the next year. Do we know what time that's going to take out of staff development time, and what can we do to mitigate the effects of that reduced development time that staff will have during exam leave?
Thank you, Chair. We have a staff working group that's working through a number of different issues and concerns, and that's one of them. It's impossible to say exactly the balance of time that will be used for different parts of that work, but as you know, the exam leave does give us opportunities, and as you rightly say, that it's something that staff use for their own professional development, but we'll be working with them closely to try and make sure that we can continue with the normal developments and look at how we can make the move back to NWCC. Staff generally are quite happy about that. In the discussions, we've not talked about the worries about the professional development. They are worried about making sure we give them the right support to get everything moved so it's ready to go. I think a key objective of all the staff is that the school is ready for when they do move back in, and that's a lot of the work will be based around that.
David?
Thanks, Chair. It's getting back to this substance misuse and behaviour in schools. Are you writing to all schools to bring it to their attention that the kids should be spoken to about these sorts of happenings that are not acceptable, rather than the 2 schools that have been nominated or mentioned? Personally, I think it should be rolled out to all schools, not just the 2 schools that were involved, and because we have big enough problems with stigma as things are at the present moment, and we certainly didn't want to increase that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a whole school and it's a multi-agency approach. This is a public protection issue, and we will take the same approach across all of our schools and working with partners to just reiterate our current expectation. We've also spoken with college staff, so to make sure our senior phase pupils, if they're attending the college, we have good communication and expectations across the 2 agencies. Schools can't do this on their own, and we'll be very clear on support and guidance for our staff as well as the young people and families.
June?
Thank you. My question was to do with, obviously, the phased relocation for staff going back in. We've heard about secondary, but I noticed Langlands are getting their 4 days, but the nursery and primary staff seem to be getting no extra time for moving. Now, as a teacher who's had to move, I've done it twice in my career in new builds. We've always had, as you say, the 2 days before, the 2 days after, with no pupils. And it gives you the chance to get everything boxed up how you need it, so that at the other end you can get it unpacked and the classroom's ready for use. I'm a bit concerned that your primary and nursery staff don't seem to be getting time to do that. And it was really to find out how you're going to make sure that if children are in school at the time of the move, is it worth them being in? Are they going to be learning? Or are staff going to be so busy boxing up things? Are children going to be boxing up things? I just have a question about how you're going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We are, as I said before, we have a staff working group that's looking at how we can support the move back to NWCC. They've sort of identified a way to try and provide a bit of extra time, which is beyond the school day, and to look at a way to pay those staff for the extra hours that they're going to put in. Scottish Government won't normally give you the extra days because we've already had the extra days for the move, for the original move. They won't probably give us that time again. So the best way to try and support staff is to pay them to do it in their own time, and that's something that we're working with them on just now.
Okay, members, I think as a committee we should thank all the staff who've been involved with this unfortunate event, and the teaching staff, the pupils and the parents, and thank them for all the assistance they've given to hopefully get us back into what is a real state-of-the-art and a real benefit for the Northwest, the new Northwest Community Campus. So on that point, can we go to the recommendations and note 2.1 and agree 2.2? Members, I have no